Can DayZ and Permadeath teach you how to live a better life? Totally. Okay, think about the first time you played a video game. Do you remember what it was? Now, think about how that game ended. It's not with victory or success. There are no balloons or streamers. Everyone's first game ends exactly the same way. Game over. That's a strange way to introduce someone to a new medium, right? Imagine if Crime and Punishment closed halfway through reading it, or Inception turned off moments before the end because you didn't understand it. The reality is that the tie that binds all of us gamers is death.
See you later.
That's kind of grim, right? But before we go any further, what does death in games normally look like? In the early days of games, death equaled cash. Early arcade games were designed to extract as much money from you as humanly possible. The game over screen became omnipresent and normal. You generally had 3 lives, or sometimes less. But then consoles arrived, and with them something that had been on personal computers for quite some time: saved games. There were checkpoints that restored your progress, autosaves, and continues. You were no longer bound by just one quarter. Increased computing power and saving mechanisms allowed games to become expansive journeys, featuring numerous levels and complex tasks. Death was present, but it wasn't really game over. So consider a title like David Cage's Beyond Two Souls. You have been burdened with an entity named Aiden, and your search for meaning will take you to war zones, on the run, and back. Along the way, you're probably gonna die a couple times. And that's okay. You don't start at the beginning or lose everything you've collected up to that point. So in the grand scheme of things, death is relatively inconsequential. It's just a roadblock to you finishing the story. In most games, death isn't really like the actual human experience. Regardless of what you believe about the afterlife, if you get hit by a bus tomorrow, you're not going to respawn at some checkpoint. You're done. Compared with games, the human experience with death is a lot more, well, permanent. And in some games, death is just like that. It's called permadeath. Permadeath means every life counts, and only counts once. You may learn from playthrough to playthrough, but in that moment, you only get one chance.
What the happened? No!
Let's take DayZ for example. Conceived by Tom Hall while he was in the New Zealand military, DayZ has almost no plot. It's an open world game where you and everyone else are fighting for survival against zombies. Naturally, there are no character motivations or cutscenes, it's just about survival. And when you die, that's it. You lose everything you've amassed and start over with nothing. Games like this are thrilling and exciting because at any moment you stand to lose everything. Without checkpoints or saves, all those hours you spent are gone, and it is brutal. Just look at the face of this kid who loses his level 60 character in the second act of Diablo 3.
Oh my god. Oh.
Permadeath means that we are constantly aware of our own mortality, which is generally something we try to avoid in our non-virtual lives. But maybe we shouldn't, because, spoiler alert, you are going to die.
Feels good, doesn't it?
Despite incredible advances in medical technology and longer life expectancies, we often don't think of the words of Greek philosopher Euripides. No one can confidently say that he or she will still be living tomorrow. But worrying about death can create all kinds of problems, and it's appropriately called death anxiety. According to psychologist Simon Rushdie in his incredibly uplifting book, War, Death Anxiety, Death Depression, and Religion, the human awareness of our own impending doom started about 150,000 years ago. In evolutionary time, that's pretty short, but we did manage to create a single coping mechanism for the reality of death: denial. And second spoiler alert, pretending that you're not going to die doesn't really work.
Back from the dead, mother.
In fact, it makes your fear of death worse. According to Stanford psychologist Irvin Yolom, denying death in the short term actually increases your death anxiety over time. The only thing to do is to face it. Recent research has shown that actively thinking about death for 5 minutes a day for a week actually decreased depressive symptoms. In a recent survey of articles on exactly this topic, an awareness of mortality can motivate people to enhance their physical health. It could also prioritize growth-oriented goals, build supportive relationships, and encourage development of peaceful, charitable communities. It's exactly the reason you hear about people changing their lives after a near-death experience. So what does this have to do with us and games? Artists and philosophers have tried to make this palpable in words and images for centuries, but games are the first time that you can directly experience and confront your own mortality, short of, well, living life itself. And the experience of permadeath in games directly parallels what modern psychologists have discovered about our own death anxiety. Think about what it's like when you play DayZ, or the hardcore mode of Diablo 3 or Minecraft. The threat of permadeath keeps you in the present. It forces you to confront what Buddhists and modern psychologists call the illusion of permanence at every single moment. Much like facing your own mortality, knowing that there's no save point to fall back on, or a continue or extra life can be anxiety producing and a little bit unpleasant.
What? I died!
But it's also this exact thing that makes games like this so thrilling. Knowing that you could lose everything at any time forces you into the present moment and makes every single action meaningful. One of the great writers of the French Renaissance, Michel de Montaigne, said, "He who would teach man to die would teach man to live." Or as the wise philosopher Patrick Swayze, aka Bodhi from the movie Point Break, put it, "If you want the ultimate, you have to be willing to pay the ultimate price." So what do you think? Does permadeath in games help us deal with death in real life? And are there other games that help us do this also? Let us know in the comments, and if you like what you saw, please subscribe. I'll see you next week. Last week we talked about whether male stereotypes in games are actually harmful. Let's see what you had to say. Fieldom08 points out that there is a bit of a contradiction, that we're willing to tolerate strong female characters, but any kind of weakness, male or female, is considered to be feminine and therefore bad. You're right, it's absolutely a double standard, and yeah, we should see weakness on both genders. To Nexus1G, that wasn't the pissing contest I was talking about, but thank you, it's a very astute observation. Aleke Videos points out that stereotypes have existed since the days of fairy tales. Yeah, that's totally true. All the more reason that we should deal with them now, right? Homer Hedgie and others pointed out that Joel from The Last of Us is a perfect example of the heroic psychopath. I think that that's totally accurate. Yeah, the consequences of killing all those people don't really weigh on him the way it would weigh on a normal person. But I'd love to see games that do that at some point in the future. Cheesehead Gaming asks who I think the best male in games is. Well, it may not be the best example, but Michael from the new GTA is actually pretty interesting. He goes to a psychiatrist, his family hates him, he's overweight, he talks about the fact that he's overweight, he sweats when he runs. I mean, these are all things that you don't typically see in male protagonists, and it's great to see Rockstar exploring that type of masculinity. To Christian, all right. First it was Toro y Moi, then it was Richard Ayoade, now it's Ira Glass. Maybe they look like me. You ever think about that? Yeah.